Well, down below us is the real nightlife of Heron Island. Heron Island in the middle of Australia's Great Barrier Reef. And the whole reef only exists because of the untiring efforts of millions upon millions of tiny little reef builders. And we're going right down now to have a look. First up, it looks like a fantastic garden, but in fact there's hardly a plant in sight. These are all animals. The reef itself is like a cement high-rise block. It really is cement. The tiny animals that make the reef are called polyps, and they actually manufacture limestone. Working hard, day and night, they cement themselves into little prison cells that form the skeleton of the reef. There are plants here, billions of them. Tiny one-celled algae that live inside the coral polyps, making their food from sunlight. So it is a garden, but a very strange one. The plants are inside the animals, and the whole lot can only grow where sunlight can reach. At night, of course, the plants, those little algae, shut down, but the rest of the reef is very much alive. Junk food is a way of life down here. The sea is like a soup, full of plankton and animal refuse. All you have to do to get a feed is sweep an arm through the water or unfurl a feeding fan. Other animals, like the anemones and polyps, zap their food with stinging cells, just like a jellyfish. Not really surprising, because the anemone is a kind of jellyfish, one that's stuck to the coral. And the polyps have to be able to beat a hasty retreat, or they'll become a meal for someone else. The sea urchins leave their daytime hideouts. Protected by their spiny armour, they come out for a graze on algae. Cousin to the seahorses, the superb trumpetfish either doesn't know or doesn't care which way is up. It often uses another fish as a shield while it stalks its prey. Then it streaks out and sucks in a tiny fish or two through its tiny mouth. Beautifully camouflaged, the wobbegong or sand shark is catching a snooze. During the day, he'll catch more than sleep. This parrotfish doesn't want to become a midnight snack. It's made a mucus sleeping bag to protect itself from enemies like moray eels who hunt by smell at night. It will sleep safely until the sun marks the start of its day. It takes several thousand years for the reef builders to rise up through the sunlit water to the surface. The new reef is battered and broken by surf and storms, and all the fragments are ground by the waves until they form a sandy beach. Cyclones may even heap great lumps of coral onto the beach. In this way, a coral cay island is formed. This handful of coral skeletons contains almost no food for the plants to eat, and there's almost no fresh water here either. So how do the plants survive, and where do they come from? Everything we needed for this Earthwatch expedition, the film, the cameras, the diving gear, even my producer, had to come in either by air or by sea. And all the plants and animals had to come in exactly the same way. The birds landed here to take a break from fishing, and where they landed, they left calling cards, very important little gifts of guano or bird droppings that make fantastic fertiliser for plants. Seeds too often came in the same way, in bird droppings.
Others rafted across the sea, sometimes travelling for months and weathering sun and storms. And once they arrived, they just waited around for the first rains. Then they settled down to the serious business of germinating and growing in the guano-enriched sand. This Pisonia forest is really quite amazing. Most plants that live in desert areas keep most of the plant below the ground so that it's protected from drying out. These Pisonias obviously have very tall trunks and lots of branches and far, far too many leaves. And you ask the question, what are the leaves for? Well, it's suspected that the leaves are actually acting as a water store. It seems as though the plants are drawing up water after the rains come. The water's then stored in the trunk and the branches and in the leaves, and so the plant during dry times can reuse this water, bring it back down the tree and use it when required. Well, the leaves aren't the only amazing thing about these Pisonia trees. They have a fantastic bird courier system for their seeds.
They hitch a ride on a carrier noddy. The seeds become very sticky as they ripen, and any noddy that brushes against them will pick up a bunch of freeloaders. Black noddies make their nests in the Pisonia trees, but the rent costs them a bundle.
Some birds pay with their lives for the privilege of living in Pisonia trees. This little bird here has found itself stuck up against too many sticky seeds, and they've wrapped themselves all around its wings and its legs. The poor little thing can hardly walk, let alone fly. And because it has to fly to catch food, this one is actually doomed to a lingering death.
The death of the noddy spells life for plants. As the bird rots, it turns into blood and bone fertiliser that gives some seeds at least a chance to grow.
Above the waterline, the plants and animals are desperate for excess food, but below the waterline, excess food is definitely not wanted. It's quite interesting, actually. This is Australia, here. The Barrier Reef down here only exists, and it's only as great as it is, because the warm waters that have flown all across the Pacific from America over here have pretty well run out of goodies, out of nutrients and food and so on. It's all been eaten by animals and dropped down to the sea floor.
This is lucky in a way, because coral can only grow in extremely clean seawater. The reef takes in very little from the surrounding water, and it gives very little back. It's a masterpiece of recycling. A delicate balance under the water and on the island itself. So what effect does a resort like Heron Island have on the reef? 70,000 people a year on one tiny island spells an awful lot of garbage.
Basically, whatever comes onto this island has to be taken off. You're not allowed to leave anything lying around, because the island's so small, you can imagine you'd be falling over it fairly soon.
Yes, one of the great delights of being on a tropical island is the occasional sip of something like this. What about fresh water?
Yeah, fresh water on coral cays is a problem because there's no water naturally found on them. So what we do here is every single building that we put up, we collect fresh rainwater off and store in tanks. But we also desalinate seawater to make up the difference. And we mix that 50-50 with the water that we collect off the roofs, and that's only for drinking. Toilet water and water for washing down, say, terraces and pieces of equipment, we use salt water.
Things really have changed in lots of ways around here. I guess only 10 years ago, spearfishing competitions were the thing, who could spear the biggest fish. I haven't seen a single spear gun here at the moment, but I've seen lots of underwater cameras.
Yeah, in the past, this island was used for spearfishing competitions, but the only thing we shoot nowadays is cameras. Because we're in a marine national park, everything is protected.
Yes.
And it's just as much satisfaction to my guests to take home a picture rather than take home a fish and then just eat it. At least you can hang the picture of the one that you took on the wall and show it around your friends.
Well, David, you're the manager of this resort. I guess that puts you in the hot seat in terms of managing out these various interests. Do you see it as a balancing act?
If I did anything to damage this island or this reef, I don't have a business anymore. So the juggling act is good for parts, and it's also good for me. I'm just protecting my business.
Tourism hasn't always been Heron Island's business. Back in the 1920s, it was a turtle soup factory. Up to 2,700 female turtles were killed each year. Within 10 years, there were so few turtles left that the factory closed down. These days, the turtles are studied and watched rather than killed. It's a very, very strange experience. We're waiting in the dark for a turtle to start laying her eggs. She's digging her nest chamber, and any light at this stage would send her back to sea. Everyone's expectant and rather excited in the silence.
Okay, this turtle is well into laying, which means that we can turn our lights on now and have a closer look at her. Okay, she's laid about half a clutch, which means that she is not very easily disturbed. And if we carefully dig in behind the turtle, we can ever so gently move her flippers aside, if you would like to hold that, David. Just very gently. And we can have a look at her laying her eggs. Very gentle. Is everybody having a good view?
It's fantastic. They're like huge golf balls.
Yeah, well, many people compare them to ping pong balls, actually.
Can I pick one up?
Oh, yes, you may get an egg. And you can feel how soft-shelled they are.
Oh, yeah.
And they're covered in mucus,
Yeah.
which may have some functions apart from acting as a general lubricant to facilitate the expelling of the eggs.
Yeah. Amazing. I'll put that one back. Now, one of the most amazing things I've heard is that these eggs don't actually all come out automatically, the one sex or the other, that the sex of the embryos depends on the temperature.
Yeah, well, that's correct.
That...
The egg, when it's laid, is sexless. And as to what sex the hatchling is going to become depends on the incubation temperature of the eggs.
So which are little boys, the hot ones or the cold ones?
Females like it hot.
After laying, the turtle buries her eggs under a great mound of sand before going back out to sea. Although it takes only 12 weeks for the eggs to hatch, it will be 50 years before those turtles that survive lay their own eggs. The island paradise syndrome, isn't it?
That's right.
With all the Great Barrier Reef has to offer, it's not surprising that it's been listed as part of the World Heritage. People are coming from all over the world to enjoy it.
Well, I traveled 14,000 miles to basically do some diving on the reef. It's world known as probably some of the best diving around.
We came partly to see the birds. They're really fantastic. There's all sorts of birds we've never seen before in our lives, especially the mutton birds, the noises they make at night, and it's incredible.
What's the best thing you've seen on the reef so far?
So far, 2 sharks and an 8-foot manta ray. Just when the sea bottom rose, I knew it was something quite interesting. 8-foot sea rays, manta rays, quite extraordinary.
Hi.
Hello, how you doing?
How was it?
Terrific. Superb. Like the French say, magnifique.
Is the reef good?
It's wunderschön.
Wunderschön. Well, people have all sorts of different reasons for coming to the reef. Some want to own an island, some want to drill for oil, some want to mine the sand, some want to chase the fish, others just want to photograph the fish. Well, Richard, with all these competing interests in the reef, who says who can do what where?
Well, it depends who owns the area. The easiest way to look at it is to look at this little fellow. He's born up there on the island. He's clearly part of Queensland territory. He comes down intertidally, like this, and he heads off towards the sea. And he's then in the marine jurisdiction, first of the state, then of the Commonwealth. And then eventually he goes offshore and he becomes international property whilst he grows up to becoming big enough, and then he comes back to mate or lay eggs.
Well, Richard, what is the extent of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park?
Well, it's the biggest marine protected area in the world. And in Australian terms, it covers an area equivalent to Victoria and Tasmania combined, plus a little bit. If we look on the map, we go up here from the latitude of Cape York, and we come all the way down the east coast of Queensland, almost as far as Brisbane.
Wow, yes, and so Heron, we're here, just in the southern section.
Yes, Heron's right at the southern end of the Barrier Reef.
Right. Yeah, now the whole thing's a national park, isn't it? So that you can't go digging things
No,
up.
it's not. It's in the jargon, it's a multiple-use protected area. Now, we provide in there for areas that are national parks that you can do the sorts of things you do in national parks. We also provide for tourism, for fishing, for the continuation of all reasonable activities which are consistent.
And these activities all have to go on in the one area, so they're sort of overlapping.
Well, that's what the planning's about.
I suppose it all comes down to individual people doing particular things like...
Well, management is about people and what people do.
Yes, yes.
How about we go and have a look at the reef walking?
Let's do it.
The trick is to look under the rocks. You can find one that's loose.
Here's a few.
Oh,
You look under there, you
that.
can see there's a little brittle starfish. He hides in there. And the whole area is covered with sponges and things. It's a whole way of life under here. Every little spot of space is being fought for.
Fantastic colours.
Yeah, the colours are amazing. A lot of the yellow things are poisonous.
Uh-huh.
There will probably be 200 or 300 species of animals and plants on
All
this.
battling it out for some territory.
All toughing it up, yeah.
Yeah.
When we put it back and look at it, it all looks pretty dead.
Yeah, yeah. What are these huge things? Are they holothurians?
Yeah, this is another of the tricks of the reef.
Whoa,
You see here?
Yuck.
They have a defence mechanism. They put out these nasty sticky spines.
Wow.
Now, you'll find that sticks to your fingers.
Do they, it's not going to poison me?
No, it won't poison you, but if you were a fish or a prawn trying to eat that thing,
Ugh.
you'd really get stuck up and you'd think twice before you tackled another one.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. This is really good fun to do. Obviously, everyone likes getting out on the reef and looking at what's under the coral, but it surely must take a toll on the reef itself, people wandering around turning things over.
Well, it does, but it's not a very significant toll compared to what happens to a reef during a cyclone or a series of big storms.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a few changes which happen in this part of the reef where there's a lot of people walking around every time there's a low tide. But then it's a small part of this reef, and people don't walk on coral because they don't want to break it, and also they don't want to cut their feet. So it's a really great way for people to learn about the reef, particularly people who aren't able to snorkel or dive. And you can also, there's the advantage, you can talk about what you see.
Now these are the gills of the spiral gill tube worm, or Christmas tree tube worm. And he has those out feeding, getting its food source and also breathing.
Special rangers have been appointed to ensure that protection of the reef isn't left to chance. Mark Simmons was the first Marine Park Ranger, and he's now one of 14 working in the area around Heron Island called Capricornia. How do you handle the enormous distances involved?
Well, Capricornia is an interesting sort of place. It's like someone went up to about 10,000 feet and threw out a whole handful of islands because we've got 15 coral caves here in the area. So we use 3 patrol boats based here on Heron Island, and we also employ a surveillance plane to cover the large areas.
So you identify the boats from the plane and then send chase boats out to get them, do you?
Yeah, we have radio contact between the plane and rangers down here on the island and the patrol boats. And so when we detect an infringement, we can direct the boats where to go. And it's then very much like a policeman, yes. We do go through a record interview, and people then will go through the process of going through the courts, and fines will be determined by the courts.
And it's fairly tough penalties for fishing in the wrong places.
Yeah, it can mean that for one lousy coral trout, it can be a $5,000 fine. So it's worth people's while to know which areas they can go fishing and which they can't when they come out to the reef region.
Policing the reef is only a small part of a ranger's job. They must also be able to share their knowledge with the public. And that means finding out as much as possible about the reef. Mark goes out with researchers such as the Queensland Turtle Research Group to learn more. Over the flipper, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, now you have the flipper there.
Yeah.
Here we are. Okay, reach out far. Get the tip of the flipper.
Yeah.
Of the flipper.
Yeah, got
over
it.
the loop.
Yeah, I got it.
Lift it up.
Oh, she's
Gently,
heavy.
gently. Hang on to the carapace and ease it into the boat so it doesn't get crushed. Okie doke.
Those flippers are really strong.
And they're sharp too.
Yeah, they've got great
Okay,
spines
now,
on them.
because these turtles bite,
Right.
they can bite through a
we see
clam
it?
shell, okay?
Yeah, can we see its mouth?
Yes, yes, you
Oh,
can.
up you come,
See
lady.
that strong beak there?
Yeah. Is this a male or a female?
Well, at this stage, at maturity, we can't tell.
Uh-huh.
This is not a fully adult turtle.
Too soon to see.
It could be either a male or a female.
Right.
Certainly not an adult. You can tell that by the size.
Right, okay. So what's next? We checked for the tags.
Okay, well, I would like to have the turtle tied in the boat first so that they can't wander around and accidentally close the jaw over one of their feet, which could hurt.
Okay.
So the mouth
Go
goes
along with
into
that
the
every inch of the
corner.
way.
The mouth goes into the corner so that their tail is secure.
That makes good sense.
Yep,
Okay, so into the corner.
into the corner. And if you wouldn't mind recording the data for us, David.
Sure. There's your tape measure. Do you want that?
Yeah. Okay, so the tag numbers on this turtle are T14719 in L3. Just put down L3.
Yep.
It's a loggerhead sub-adult.
Loggerhead sub-adult.
Yes. Measuring 80 centimeters
80. Okay, got
over
it.
the carapace. But that's the routine data that we take on every turtle. Now, if this turtle wasn't wearing these T-tags, we would probably take it ashore and weigh it and measure it and etc. and do more detailed examination of it. But since we've seen it not too long ago, we can let it go.
So we let it go now.
We just
Okay,
let it
let's
go
do
now.
that. Wow.
Okay.
Let it go back to see him or her, whichever it turns out to be. So it's the same thing in reverse, is it?
Yep, we would know it probably in about another 10 years whether she is
How old will she be, he or she?
a...
Do you reckon?
They were probably about 30, 35, 40 years old. They would take about 50 years to get into a sexually mature animal. Now, put your hand up. Just tip her over.
Swing
Turn
clear.
it over. Yep.
Well, our attitudes to the barrier reef have changed dramatically over the last 10 to 15 years. New technologies have made it possible for people to enjoy the reef without destroying it. And that means that people like me and you and our children can enjoy one of the greatest natural wonders of the world and continue to do so.